Steve Sarkisian's been busy. Steve Sarkisian, the new head coach at Texas, just won a national championship at Alabama. You know, I was talking earlier today with one of you, actually, and I had been going back and forth about how to break up the Alabama monopoly and the Ohio State, Clemson, the very few at the top, the elites that are apparently monopolistically strangleholding college football, and I don't believe that. I know that's what it looks like, but I don't believe that that's what's actually going on. I just think there are a few programs out there who have harnessed the sport to their advantage and done what other programs are capable of doing it. They've just done it the right way, and they're reaping the benefits right now. It's nothing that Texas isn't capable of. It's nothing Southern Cal isn't capable of. It's nothing Michigan and Tennessee aren't capable of. You just haven't done it, and they have, okay? So now Texas has got Sark, and he's in the driver's seat at Texas, and I have long maintained the simple solution to competing with the big boys is make better hires. So stands to reason, Steve Sarkisian, you know, we're still out to lunch on whether he's going to be an elite head coach. Hey, he's doing some coach poaching, though, so he's making some good assistant coaching hires. He has targeted a lot of Alabama guys, and it's rubbed some of you Alabama folks the wrong way. I think the head coach at Alabama has been none too pleased with at least one of these departures. So Kyle Flood was the offensive line coach at Alabama. He has gone on to be named the O-line / offensive coordinator at Texas. Now, that role is going to be a little different because Sark's going to call the plays. But yet, when you get that OC next to your name, you get a big pay increase. And so pay increase is going to be a familiar theme for anyone who gets hired at Texas. Like if Texas hired Director Colin and I to do late kick, we'd get a 400% pay increase because that's what happens when you print money. Jeff Banks was the big news today. Jeff Banks was the special teams coach at Alabama, a really integral part of their Texas recruiting apparatus. And he's from Texas. He's got kids in Texas. He's now going back to Texas as tight ends and special teams coach. That's one that, you know, we've gotten word from a couple of people Nick Saban wasn't all that thrilled about. However, he has gotten a pay bump. Keep in mind what I just told you. That's not an offensive coordinator. That is a tight ends special teams coach, and he's going to make right at $1 million per year over the next 3 years, a little north of $1 million a year. Defensive line coach Bo Davis is the guy out there. He's been a guy that's been around Nick Saban a whole lot. Outside linebackers coach, I've seen Taj Lupoy's name thrown around, and so there's a lot of Alabama flavor there, you'll notice. And the philosophy is pretty easy to get. You look where Sark was, then you look where he went, and you look where he is now. And the whole Sark to Texas hire essentially is about Texas hiring Steve Sarkisian version 2015 and beyond. Because if you were to just look at this and you were to say they just got rid of who? Tom Herman, and he went 32-18 at Texas. And they hired who? Steve Sarkisian, and he went 46-35 in his career as a head coach. How is this an upgrade? Well, for all intents and purposes, as far as Texas is concerned, you might as well not even look at Sark's head coaching record because they don't view themselves as hiring that guy. That guy had off-field issues. That guy had a lot to learn. Like, they're hiring the Alabama version. They're hiring the version of Steve Sarkisian who has worked under Nick Saban and hopefully gleaned a lot of new structural leadership type intangibles from Nick Saban. That's what they're hoping. Whether that ends up being the case or not, it remains to be seen. But the belief is they've got the new and improved version of Steve Sarkisian. He has obviously bought into that philosophy too, because that's why he wants a lot of folks who've been in his life the past 5 years and who have been around that Alabama machine too, so that he's not walking in the door trying to explain to everybody in that organization how it's supposed to work and it be foreign language to everyone. He's got some guys who know what the game's about. He's got some guys who know what that process is about. And it stands to reason, you know, if he's 2015 to 2020 version, Steve Sarkisian, he wants as many people who he's been around in that time frame. So it really jives with that philosophy. It also jives with some of the other reporting. You know, I was looking at our guys and girls over at horns247.com before we came on air here, and you know, there was an anecdote that I had not heard. Actually, I'd heard it from one person. I didn't know how legitimate it was. Tom Herman went after, this is according to Chip over at Horns247, went after Jeff Banks this time last year, wanted to hire him on the staff this time last year, and Banks didn't go. For the same reason that a lot of people didn't want to attach themselves to that Texas job. They didn't know about the job status of Tom Herman, and that was pretty prophetic, as it turns out, and it wasn't all that hard to figure out, to be honest with you. So now we're looking at defensive coordinator. This is the next really juicy domino that is going to fall, and it involves a number of teams. That's why it's really important to pay attention this time of year, because this is not just going to affect Texas. It could affect Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. Like, there are a lot of dominoes. When I tell you a program is a keystone program, this is exactly what I mean. The defensive coordinator move that's about to be made here will have a ripple effect that is felt by a number of programs, and then their subsequent move will be felt by a number of programs, and it ends up affecting the entire sport in some shape, form, or fashion. But it hinges a lot on what Nick Saban's going to do. So right now, Saban's got a defensive coordinator. His name's Pete Golding. Pete Golding's name has been mentioned pretty prominently over the past week with the Texas job, ever since you knew that Steve Sarkisian was going to take the head coaching job. Now, Pete Golding to Texas, how in the world would that happen? Well, I think it had happened with Nick Saban's blessing, and that's about the only way it had happened. How would Nick Saban let his defensive coordinator walk away? Answer, if he knew he had an upgrade replacement already ready to come in the door. Who would that be? Well, I think it'd be Jeremy Pruitt, but I also see the reporting over at Horns 24/7 about, Dan Lanning at Georgia. Now, I got to tell you, that's not something I've heard. That's the first I've heard of that. Doesn't mean it's not true. That's the first I've heard of it. And so the point is, I think we're in wait-and-see mode. Now you see why I focus so much on Tennessee. It could very well be that the decision Tennessee makes impacts the decision Nick Saban makes, impacts the decision Steve Sarkisian makes, and so you could have a whole lot of guys moving around. I mean, Golding's been mentioned loosely with the LSU defensive coordinator opening, so you got all these names, and you got all this dust that has to settle, and that's what I'm watching, and that's why I'm focused so much on this. I don't know if it's a triangle, but this circle, this coaching circle of life, if you will, because I think a lot of it's going to be precipitated, for better or for worse, for a number of programs, by what Tennessee does. But that is that's where Pruitt ties in, and that's what I think we're waiting on right now.